The crystal towers of Maltyre had stood for 3,000 years. They reached into the purple sky like frozen lightning, each one carved from a single piece of living crystal that sang in the wind. Commander Zilthi had walked these streets as a young one, listening to the music his people's cities made when the twin suns set each evening. Now those towers lay broken. Black smoke rose from the ruins where the singing crystals once stood. The music had stopped forever. Zilthi stood on what remained of the command platform, his 6 arms working frantically at the communication controls. His crystalline body, normally a beautiful shade of deep blue, had turned gray with grief and exhaustion. Around him, the last few survivors of his people worked to keep their final message relay functioning. "Status report," he commanded, though his voice cracked like breaking glass. "Sir, the outer colonies have all gone silent," reported his aide, a younger Kethver named Polanin. "The last transmission came from Veltar Prime 12 hours ago. They said the sky was full of black ships that looked alive." His primary eyes but kept his secondary ones focused on the scanner displays. The approaching fleet was massive beyond imagination. Thousands of ships moved through space like a swarm of insects, each one pulsing with organic life. They had come from the dark between galaxies, consuming everything in their path, the Vorthok swarm. Even the name made civilized species shudder with fear. "How long until they reach us?" Zilthi asked. 6 hours, Commander? Maybe less. 6 hours. In 6 hours, the last free world of the Kethver would fall. In 6 hours, civilization that had brought music and beauty to the galaxy for millennia would be nothing but scattered. Atoms drifting in space, unless someone helped them. "Open a channel to all known civilizations," Zilthi ordered. Frequency. Maximum power. The communication array hummed to life, sending his plea across the stars. It would reach the great Galactic Council chambers on Proxima Station. It would find the trading posts of the Merchant Guild and the fortress worlds of the military powers. It would travel to every corner of known space, carrying the desperate words of a dying people. This is Commander Zilthi of the Kethber Republic, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Our worlds are under attack by the Vorthok swarm. We are a peaceful people with no military forces capable of stopping them. We offer our entire mineral wealth, the accumulated treasures of 3,000 years, to any civilization willing to defend us. Please, we are running out of time. The response came faster than he had hoped. The first reply arrived from the Altarian Republic within minutes. Ambassador Veldon's long face appeared on the screen, his expression full of sympathy and regret. "Commander Zilthi, the Altarian Republic grieves with you in this dark hour. However, our military analysts have studied the Vorthok extensively. They have never been defeated in battle. Even our combined fleets would not be enough to stop them. We must preserve our forces to defend our own worlds when the swarm moves on. We are truly sorry." More replies followed. Each one brought fresh disappointment. The Zephyrian Empire sent their regrets. Their fleets were already committed to defending the Outer Rim territories. They could not spare ships for what they called a hopeless cause. The Quantum Collective ran probability calculations in real time during their transmission. The chances of successfully defending against the Vorthok swarm, 0.003%. They recommended immediate evacuation of all Kethver personnel to preserve the species. The hegemony of suns offered to accept Kethver refugees, but made it clear that sending military aid would be an unacceptable risk to our own citizens. One by one, every major power in the galaxy found reasons to refuse. They sent sympathy. They offered prayers in their various languages and customs. Some even offered to preserve Kethver cultural artifacts for future generations, but none would fight. Hours passed. The Vorthok fleet grew larger on the scanners. Zilthi could see individual bioships now, their surfaces rippling with organic movement. They looked less like spacecraft and more like enormous living creatures swimming through the void. Commander Polanin said quietly, "Perhaps we should consider evacuation. Some of our people could survive on the refugee ships." Zilthi looked at his aide with tired eyes. "How many ships do we have capable of interstellar travel?" 47, sir? They could carry maybe 10,000 of our people. 10,000. Out of a population of billions. The rest would die when the swarm arrived. Consumed by creatures that saw entire civilizations as nothing more than food? Keep broadcasting, Zilthi ordered. Someone has to answer. Someone has to care. As if summoned by his words, the communication array chimed with an incoming transmission. Zilthi activated the display, expecting another polite refusal from some distant government. Instead, he found himself looking at something he had never seen before. The being on the screen was clearly alien, but not like any species in the galactic databases. It had only 2 arms, 2 legs, and skin that was pink, rather than scaled or crystalline. Hair grew from the top of its head in an unusual brown color. Most strange of all, it had only 2 eyes, both facing forward like a predator. "This is Admiral Claire Hayes of Earth Defense Command," the creature said. Its voice was deeper than Zilthi expected, and there was something in its tone that he had not heard from any of the other replies. Certainty, confidence, anger. "We received your distress call, Commander Zilthi. I want you to know that help is on the way. We're dispatching a fleet immediately. So hold your positions and protect your people as best you can. Earth is coming." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun. Zilthi stared at the blank screen in confusion. Earth. He had never heard of such a world. He quickly accessed the galactic databases, searching for any information about this mysterious species. What he found made his crystalline heart sink. Earth was listed as a minor world on the very edge of the galaxy. Class M planet recently discovered. Inhabited by a species called humans. The database entry was brief and not encouraging. Primitive technology. No major spacefaring capability. Homeworld classified as Class 12 Deathworld due to extreme environmental conditions. A Deathworld. Zilthi had heard the term before. It referred to planets so hostile to life that any species evolving there would have to be incredibly tough just to survive. But that usually meant they were also violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. Sir Paulinen had been reading over his shoulder. "What's a Deathworld?" "It means their planet tries to kill them every day," Zilthi replied slowly. "The weather, the animals, the plants, even the ground itself. Everything on their world is hostile to life. Then they must be warriors." Zilthi looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Vorthok fleet. Thousands of ships that had conquered half the galaxy. Greatest military minds of dozens of civilizations had declared them unbeatable, and help was coming from a death world that most of the galaxy had never heard of. "Commander," his communication officer called out, "I'm picking up hyperspace signatures. Something's coming out of jump space at the edge of the system." Zilthi activated the long-range scanners. There, against the starfield, ships were materializing out of hyperspace, but not the massive fleets he had hoped for. He counted them quickly. 12 ships. Only 12. They were smaller than the great battleships of the major powers. There. Designs were strange. Angular, where most galactic ships were smooth. They moved with a predatory grace that reminded him somehow of the creatures in the old stories his people told their young ones. Stories about hunters that stalked their prey through dark forests. 12 ships, Paulinen whispered, against thousands. Zilthi watched the human fleet take position between his world and the approaching swarm. 12 ships from a death world that nobody had ever heard of. It should have been a hopeless gesture, a meaningless sacrifice that would only delay the inevitable by minutes. But as he watched those strange, angular ships spread out in a formation unlike anything in the military textbooks, Commander Zilthi felt something he had not experienced. In days, hope maybe, just maybe. The rest of the galaxy had been wrong about what it took to stop the Vorthok swarm, maybe. What they needed was not the most advanced civilization or the largest fleet. Maybe what they needed was someone crazy enough to fight when everyone else said it was impossible. Someone from a death world. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the star patterns shift as his small fleet moved through hyperspace. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the navigation computers. His crew worked at their stations with the calm efficiency that came from months of training together. Jake had been a captain for only 2 years, but he had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15. He remembered when humanity first discovered they were not alone in the universe. The excitement, the wonder, the hope that they would find friends among the stars. Instead, they found a galaxy that barely noticed them. Earth was too far from the major trade routes. Humans were too new, too primitive, too violent for the taste of civilized species. Most aliens who bothered to visit Earth at all left quickly, disturbed by stories of human wars and the dangerous wildlife that roamed their homeworld. Jake did not mind being ignored. It meant humanity could grow stronger without interference. It meant they could build their own ships, develop their own technology, train their own soldiers without anyone trying to stop them. Now, for the first time, someone needed them. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. "Incoming transmission from Earth Defense Command." "Put it through, Amy." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the tired face of Admiral Claire Hayes. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many difficult decisions. She had been Jake's commanding officer when he was just a lieutenant, and he respected her more than anyone else in the fleet. "Jake," the Admiral said, "I need to be completely honest about what you're flying into. Our xenobiology teams have been studying everything we can find about the Vorthak. These things are not just dangerous. They're living weapons designed by evolution to kill and consume everything they encounter." Jake nodded. He had read the reports. The Vorthak were insectoid creatures the size of humans, but with armor-plated shells that could stop most energy weapons. Their blood was acidic enough to eat through metal. They reproduced by laying eggs in the bodies of their victims. Worst of all, they shared a hive mind that let them coordinate attacks across entire star systems. "I understand the risks, Admiral," Jake replied, "but we're going anyway." "Why?" Admiral Hayes leaned forward, her expression serious. "Jake, every major power in the galaxy turned down this mission. The Kethver are strangers to us. We have no treaties with them, no trade agreements, nothing that requires us to help. We could ignore their call for aid, and no one would blame us." Jake looked out at the stars, streaming past the viewport. He thought about his hometown back on Earth, a small place called Cedar Falls, where everyone knew their neighbors. He remembered how the whole town had come together when the Miller family lost their farm in a flood. No one had asked what they would get in return for helping. They helped because it was the right thing to do. "Because that's who we are, Admiral," he said finally. "When someone asks for help, humans answer the call." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, and Jake saw a flash of the young officer she had been decades ago. "That's what I hoped you'd say. Good hunting, Captain. Bring your people home." The transmission ended. Jake turned to find Dr. Lisa Chen approaching his command chair. She was the fleet's chief scientist, a small woman with bright eyes who could explain complex alien biology in simple terms. She carried a datapad covered with charts and diagrams. "Captain," she said, "I've been studying every piece of information we have about the Vorthak. Their biology is fascinating in a terrifying way. They're essentially perfect killing machines, evolved over millions of years to consume and destroy." "Can we fight them?" Jake asked. "Not in a fair fight," Lisa admitted. "They're stronger than humans, faster than humans, and their natural armor can stop most of our weapons. But they do have weaknesses. They can't adapt quickly to environmental changes. Their hive mind creates delays when they're spread across multiple locations. And most importantly, they've never fought anything like us." "What do you mean?" Lisa pulled up a holographic display showing various alien species. "Look at the civilizations they've conquered. Peaceful traders, advanced scientists, disciplined. Military forces that fight by established rules. The Vorthak have learned to counter every conventional tactic in the galaxy. But humans don't fight conventionally." Jake understood. Human military doctrine was built around the idea that there were no rules in war except winning. Other species might consider some tactics dishonorable or uncivilized. Humans considered them necessary. We'll have to be creative, he said. Very creative, Lisa agreed, and probably a little crazy. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Andorian system 2 hours later. Jake had studied the star charts, but seeing the devastation with his own eyes was different. Dozens of planets that had once supported life now glowed with the fires of destruction. The Vorthok fleet hung in space around Kethver Prime like a dark cloud, thousands of organic ships that pulsed with alien life. Jesus, whispered Navigator Ryan Cole.
How many of them are there?
Sensors show approximately 3,000 bioships, reported Tactical Officer Brad Murphy. Each one is roughly the size of our heavy cruisers. Jake did the math in his head. 3,000 ships against 12. 250 to 1 odds. Any sane military commander would retreat immediately and hope the enemy did not pursue. But Jake was not feeling particularly sane at the moment. "Open a channel to all ships," he ordered. "This is Captain Morrison to all vessels. I know what you're thinking. I know these odds look impossible. Every other species in the galaxy thinks we're about to die for nothing. But I want you to remember. Something we're humans. We're from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We survived ice ages and asteroid impacts and diseases that should have wiped us out. We climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet full of things that wanted to eat us." He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. They were scared, but they were ready. "These things might be perfect killing machines," Jake continued. "But they've never fought a species that evolved in hell. They've never faced humans who refuse to quit, even when quitting makes sense. Today, we're going to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when someone needs protection." The communications officer patched him through to the Kethver command. Center Commander Zilthi's crystalline face appeared on the screen, hope and desperation warring in his alien features. "Captain Morrison," the alien commander said, 12 ships cannot stand against the entire swarm. You should retreat while you still can." "With respect, Commander," Jake replied, "you don't know humans very well. We didn't come here to run away. We came here to fight. Is there anything you can tell us about Vorthok tactics?" "They attack in coordinated waves," Zilthi explained. "Perfect formations, flawless timing. Their hive mind lets them move like a single organism. They overwhelm enemy positions with superior numbers and never retreat." Jake smiled grimly. "Perfect. Formations and flawless timing. That means they're predictable. Ryan, plot me an intercept course for the edge of their fleet. Take us through that asteroid field." "Sir, that's going to put us right in the middle of them," Ryan protested. "Exactly. Brad, I want you to prepare some special surprises for our new friends. Time to show them what human creativity looks like." As the small human fleet moved toward the massive Vorthok armada, Jake felt the familiar calm that came before battle. Other species might have better technology or larger fleets, but humans had something else. They had the stubborn refusal to give up that came from evolving on a world that never gave them an easy day. The Vorthok had conquered half the galaxy by being perfect predators, but they had never encountered prey that fought back with the fury of cornered animals. They had never faced creatures that turned their own environment into a weapon. They were about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world, and why the species that survived such a place might be the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The first battle began in the asteroid belt that surrounded Kethver Prime. Captain Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as his 12 ships spread out in a pattern that would have confused any military academy instructor in the galaxy. Instead of forming the traditional battle lines that civilized species used, the human vessels scattered like wolves hunting in a pack. "All ships, this is Morrison," he broadcast on the fleet channel. "Remember what we discussed? We're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Use everything the enemy doesn't expect." The Vorthok bioships responded exactly as Jake had hoped they would. Their hive mind directed them in perfect formation, moving like the fingers of a single massive hand. 300 of the organic vessels peeled away from the main fleet and came after the scattered human ships. To the aliens, it must have looked like the humans were running in panic. They were wrong. Lieutenant Commander Sam Torres commanded the destroyer U.S. Relentless. He was a former asteroid miner who had joined the military when Earth started building its space fleet. Now, as 3 Vorthok bioships chased him deeper into the asteroid field, he smiled grimly and activated his mining charges. The Vorthok ships followed him between 2 massive asteroids, their hulls pulsing with organic life. They moved in perfect coordination, just as their hive mind directed. But coordination meant nothing when the environment itself became your enemy. Torres triggered the charges he had planted on both asteroids. Explosions sent millions of tons of rock flying in all directions. The Vorthok ships, designed for clean space combat, couldn't adapt fast enough to the chaos. One bioship was crushed between 2 huge chunks of stone. Another had its organic hull torn open by razor-sharp fragments moving at incredible speed. "This is Torres," he reported over the comm. 2 down, 1 damaged. These things don't know how to handle messy environments. Across the battlefield, Captain Nina Rodriguez was discovering another weakness in Vorthok tactics. Her ship, the UES Vengeance, was being chased by 5 bioships through a dense field of metallic asteroids. Instead of running, she suddenly reversed course and flew straight at her pursuers. The Vorthok hive mind calculated that she was attempting to ram them, suicidal tactic that made no sense. They spread out to avoid the impact, breaking their perfect formation for the first time in the battle. That was exactly what Nina had been waiting for. Fire everything, she ordered her weapons officer. The Vengeance unleashed every missile and energy beam it carried. Not at the bioships, but at the metallic asteroids around them. The metal chunks exploded into clouds of superheated shrapnel that tore through the separated Vorthok vessels. Without their coordinated formation, they couldn't protect each other from the debris storm. "Rodriguez here," she reported with satisfaction. 5 kills confirmed. They really don't like it when we change the rules. But Jake Morrison was preparing the most audacious attack of all. His ship, the Defiant, was being pursued by a dozen Vorthok bioships through a field of ice asteroids. The aliens thought they had cornered him near a large chunk of frozen water and methane. Instead, Jake had led them into a trap. "Pete," he called to Sergeant Pete Johnson, his military advisor. "The package is ready." Johnson was a former mining engineer who had learned to make explosives out of anything available. "Ready, Captain?" "Nuclear mines disguised as escape pods. The Vorthok won't be able to resist them." Jake had studied the enemy's behavior patterns. The Vorthok consumed everything organic they encountered, but they also absorbed certain materials. To strengthen their bioarmor, they were driven by instinct to investigate anything that might be useful food or resources. "Launch the packages," Jake ordered. A dozen objects that looked like human escape pods ejected from the Defiant. They tumbled through space, broadcasting weak distress signals that suggested desperate humans were trying to flee. The Vorthok bioships moved to intercept them, their organic hulls already opening to consume what they thought was easy prey. The nuclear explosions lit up the darkness like tiny suns. The bioships that had been trying to feed on the fake pods were vaporized instantly. The others were caught in the blast waves and sent tumbling through the asteroid field. 12 confirmed kills, Jake reported calmly. "The enemy is learning that humans don't abandon their people. Even our escape pods bite back." Commander Zilthi watched the battle from his command center on Kethver Prime, his crystalline eyes wide with amazement. The tactical display showed something he had never seen before. The massive Vorthok fleet was actually pulling back, regrouping after losing dozens of ships to an enemy they outnumbered 200 to 1. "How are they doing this?" asked his aide Polinin. "The humans have only 12 ships. They're not fighting like any species I've ever seen," Zilthi replied. "They're using the environment as a weapon. They're making the battlefield itself fight for them." Dr. Lisa Chen was monitoring the battle from her laboratory aboard the UES Darwin. She had been analyzing the wreckage of destroyed Vorthok ships, and what she found was both encouraging and terrifying. "Captain Morrison," she called over the fleet channel, "I'm seeing something interesting in the bioship debris. The Vorthok absorb materials from their environment to strengthen themselves, but they can't process everything. Some of our weapons are actually poisoning them from the inside." Jake's tactical mind immediately saw the possibilities. "What kind of poison?" "Synthetic compounds that don't exist in nature," Lisa explained. Their biological systems can't break them down. If we could seed the battlefield with the right chemicals, we could turn their own feeding instincts against them. Do it, Jake. Ordered all ships, new mission parameters. From now on, every piece of debris we create, every asteroid we destroy gets laced with synthetic toxins. We're going to make this entire star system poisonous to them. The battle entered a new phase as the humans began implementing their chemical warfare strategy. Every explosion, every destroyed asteroid, every piece of wreckage became a hidden weapon. The Vorthok, following their instinctive need to absorb useful materials, began consuming substances that would slowly kill them from within. Captain Roy Baker, commanding the frigate U.S. Thunder, found himself trapped between two large bioships, near a cluster of iron-rich asteroids. Instead of trying to escape, he began firing his mining lasers at the space rocks around him. As the asteroids broke apart, his crew used their chemical dispensers to coat every fragment with synthetic polymers that would be toxic to Vorthok biology. The bioships, seeing valuable iron ore floating free, began absorbing the contaminated debris. Within minutes, their organic hulls started showing signs of distress. Strange colors rippled across their surfaces as their biological systems tried and failed to process the foreign chemicals. "This is Baker," he reported. "The poison strategy is working. These two are dying from the inside out." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human creativity met alien instinct. The Vorthok had evolved to be perfect predators, but they had never encountered prey that fought back with such ruthless intelligence. Every natural behavior that had made them successful was being turned against them. The hive mind that controlled the swarm began to show signs of confusion. Ships that had moved in perfect coordination for millions of years suddenly started making errors. Some bioships attacked their own kind, mistaking damaged vessels for enemies. Others became paralyzed with indecision as their shared consciousness struggled to process tactics it had never encountered. Jake Morrison watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The immediate area around Kethfer Prime was now clear of Vorthok ships, but he knew this was just the beginning. The main swarm still contained thousands of bioships, and they were already adapting to human tactics. "All ships, form up on me," he ordered. "We've bought the Keth for some time, but the real fight is just starting. These things are learning from their mistakes." As the small human fleet regrouped, Jake looked out at the stars, where the main Vorthok armada waited. They had proven that Deathworld tactics could work against seemingly impossible odds. But the enemy was vast. Humans were still just 12 ships against thousands. The next phase of the battle would test whether human stubbornness could overcome the most successful predator species the galaxy had ever known. Dr. Lisa Chen had not slept in 36 hours. Her laboratory aboard the UES Darwin was filled with samples of destroyed Vorthok bioships, strange organic materials that pulsed with alien life even after being separated from their parent vessels. The smell was terrible, like rotting meat mixed with burning plastic. But Lisa ignored it as she worked. She had made a discovery that could change everything. "Captain Morrison," she called over the fleet communication system, "I need to speak with you immediately. I've found something." Jake's image appeared on her screen. His uniform was torn and dirty from the recent battles, and his face showed the exhaustion of a man who had been fighting impossible odds for days. Behind him, she could see the bridge of the Defiant, where his crew continued their desperate struggle against the Vorthok swarm. "Talk to me, Doc," Jake said. "We can use any advantage you've found?" Lisa held up a piece of organic material that glowed with a soft blue light. "This came from one of the bioships we destroyed yesterday. At first, I thought it was just another piece of their hull, but it's not. It's something much more important." Activated a holographic display that showed the complex structure of the sample. "The Vorthok hive mind isn't as simple as we thought. It doesn't work like a human brain where everything is connected directly. Instead, it uses quantum entanglement to coordinate across interstellar distances. But that requires relay nodes." Leaned forward, suddenly interested. "Relay nodes? Special Vorthok variants that act like communication hubs?" Lisa explained. "They're bigger than the normal bioships, with more complex organic structures. They coordinate the hive mind across multiple star systems. If we can find and destroy these nodes, we can fragment their coordination. Captain Alina Vasquez had been listening from her scout ship, the UES Shadow. She was a former intelligence officer who had spent the last few days monitoring Vorthok communication patterns, trying to understand how their fleet operated. Dr. Chen Alina said, "I've been tracking unusual biosignatures in their fleet. There are 3 ships that are different from the others. It's much larger, with energy patterns that don't match the standard bioships. Those are our targets, Jake." Decided immediately. "Lena, can you get us detailed scans of these relay nodes?" "I can try, but I'll have to get close. Really close." Jake knew what that meant. The Shadow was the smallest ship in the human fleet, designed for reconnaissance. Rather than combat, getting close enough to scan the relay nodes would put Alina and her crew in terrible danger. "Do it," he ordered. "But be careful. We need that information, but we need you alive to deliver it." Alina's ship slipped away from the main human formation, using its stealth systems to approach the massive Vorthok fleet. The bioships moved in their perfect formations, thousands of organic vessels that pulsed with alien life. But now that she knew what to look for, Alina could see the 3 ships that were different. They were huge, easily 3 times the size of the largest bioships. Their hulls were covered with strange organic growths that looked like massive brain tissue. Streams of energy flowed between them and the surrounding fleet. Quantum entanglement made visible. "My God," whispered her sensor operator, Lieutenant Dan Wells. "Those things are like living computers." Alina activated her ship's most powerful scanners, gathering detailed information about the relay nodes.
Ow.
But the intense scanning beams were detected by the Vorthok almost immediately. Dozens of bioships began converging on her position. "Shadow to all ships," Alina broadcast as she fled toward the asteroid belt. "I have the data, but I've got company. Lots of company." The chase that followed would be remembered in human military history as one of the most daring escapes ever recorded. Alina flew her small ship through asteroid fields and debris clouds, using every trick she had learned in 20 years of military service. The bioships pursuing her were faster and more maneuverable, but they couldn't match human desperation. In creativity, she finally lost them by hiding inside the wreckage of a destroyed space station, powering down her ship's systems and drifting like just another piece of debris. For 2 hours, she waited in the dark while Vorthok bioships searched for her just meters away. When she finally rejoined the human fleet, her data had given them the weapon they needed. 3 relay nodes, Jake announced to his captains during their tactical briefing. "Let's destroy them, and we can break the hive mind's coordination across this entire sector." The assault on the first relay node required every trick the humans had learned about fighting an enemy that outnumbered them. Captain Troy Baldwin of the heavy cruiser U.S. Hammer volunteered to lead the most dangerous part of the attack. "I'll draw their attention," he said during the planning session. "Make them think I'm trying to ram the relay node. While they're focused on stopping me, the rest of you can hit it from the flanks." It was a desperate plan, but it worked. Baldwin flew his ship straight at the first relay node, ignoring the hundreds of bioships that moved to intercept him. The Vorthok hive mind calculated that he was attempting a suicide attack and concentrated all nearby forces on stopping him. That left the relay node vulnerable to attack from. Captain Sam Torres and Captain Nina Rodriguez, who approached from opposite sides using the gravity well of a nearby moon to mask their approach, their combined firepower tore through the relay node's organic hull and destroyed its quantum communication systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Vorthok bioships across several light-years suddenly lost coordination. Ships that had moved in perfect harmony for millions of years began attacking each other in confusion. Some became paralyzed, unable to act without direction from the hive mind. But the swarm adapted quickly. The remaining 2 relay nodes strengthened their control, and within hours the confused bioships were coordinated again. "We need to hit the second node before they can fully compensate," Jake decided. "But this time they'll be expecting us." The assault on the second relay node required the most dangerous tactic in human military doctrine: a boarding action. Commander Beth Parker, a former Special Forces operative, volunteered to lead a team of Marines in modified spacesuits that could survive inside the organic interiors of Vorthok bioships. "This is insane," protested Lieutenant Alex Moore, her tactical officer. "We don't even know if humans can survive inside those things." "That's why it might work," Beth replied grimly.
Ow.
"They won't expect us to try something this crazy." The boarding team launched from the assault ship U.S. Warrior in specially modified pods that looked like pieces of space debris. The relay node's organic hull absorbed them, thinking they were useful materials. Once inside, Beth and her Marines found themselves in a nightmare landscape of living corridors that pulsed with alien life. They fought their way through passages of organic flesh, using flamethrowers and acid charges to burn through the ship's nervous system. The Vorthok defenders were unlike anything they had encountered before, creatures that were part of the ship itself, grown specifically to repel boarders. Beth's final transmission was brief: "Package delivered. Get clear." The explosion that followed destroyed not only the second relay node, but 3 surrounding bioships. The loss of another communication hub sent shockwaves through the Vorthok fleet. More ships turned on each other, their hive mind fragmenting under the strain. Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as chaos spread through the enemy fleet. They had done something no other species had managed in centuries of galactic warfare. They had made the Vorthok afraid. But one relay node remained, and it was the largest of the 3. The final battle would test everything humans had learned about fighting an enemy that should have been unbeatable. "All ships," Jake announced, "prepare for the final assault. We've shown them that Deathworlders don't give up. Now let's show them why Earth breeds survivors." The final battle took place in orbit around Kethver Prime, where the last Vorthok relay node hung in space like a massive organic brain. It was 3 times larger than the others, pulsing with dark energy as it struggled to coordinate the remaining swarm forces. Around it, nearly 1,000 bioships formed protective circles, their hulls gleaming with the scars of recent battles. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, looking at what remained of his small fleet. 7 ships. That was all that survived from the 12 that had answered the Kethver's desperate call for help. Each vessel bore the marks of weeks of brutal combat against impossible odds. The UES Hammer was held together with emergency patches and human stubbornness. The UES Thunder had lost half its weapons systems, but kept fighting with mining lasers. The UES Shadow's stealth systems were offline, forcing Alina Vasquez to rely on pure piloting skill to avoid enemy fire. But they were still here, still fighting, still refusing to give up. "All ships. This is Morrison," Jake broadcast on the fleet channel. "I know what you're thinking. 7 ships against 1,000 doesn't sound like good odds. But remember what we've learned about these things. They're not as invincible as everyone thought. They're just bullies who never met anyone willing to fight back." On the surface of Kethver Prime, Commander Zilthi watched the human fleet take position for their final attack. His crystalline people had rebuilt their communication centers in the ruins of their great cities. And now they served as observers to what might be the last battle in their star system. "They're really going to try it," whispered his aide Polanin. 7 ships against the entire remaining swarm. "They're humans," Zilthi replied, his voice filled with something that might have been awe. "I'm beginning to understand what that means." The attack began with Commander Kate O'Brien leading the charge in the UES Defender. Her ship had originally been captained by Commander Robert Hayes, but he had died in the assault on the second relay node. Kate had been his first officer, a quiet woman from the farming colonies who had joined the military to see the galaxy. Now, she was about to ram her ship into the most dangerous target in known space. "Defender to all ships," she transmitted calmly. "I'm going in first. Use my attack run to cover your approach to the relay node." The massive bioships surrounding the relay node turned to intercept her. Streams of organic projectiles and energy beams filled the space around her ship. Kate flew through the deadly fire with the skill that came from growing up piloting crop dusters through thunderstorms. Her ship took hit after hit, but she kept flying. Emergency lights flashed red on her bridge as system after system failed. Her crew worked frantically to keep the engines running and the weapons firing. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported her damage control officer. "We're losing atmosphere. Seal it off," Kate ordered. "We just need to hold together a little longer." The Defender broke through the protective screen of bioships, its hull glowing red from enemy fire. Kate could see the relay node ahead, its massive organic structure pulsing with the quantum energies that coordinated the swarm. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a living work of art designed by nightmares. For everyone who couldn't fight back, she transmitted to the fleet. Kate activated her ship's self-destruct sequence and flew straight into the relay node's core structure. The explosion that followed was visible from the surface of Kethber Prime, a brilliant flash that lit up the alien sky. But the relay node survived. Its organic hull was damaged, energy patterns flickering as its systems tried to compensate for the massive trauma. But it was still functional. Jake Morrison watched Kate's sacrifice with a heavy heart and turned his attention back to the battle. The remaining human ships were scattered across the battlefield, each one fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. "Torres," he called to the captain of the UES Relentless. "Status report. I've got about 50 bioships chasing me through the debris field," Sam Torres replied, his voice strained. "But I'm leading them into the contaminated zone. Remember all those synthetic toxins we've been spreading around? They're about to get a concentrated dose." Jake smiled grimly. Even facing certain defeat, humans kept finding ways to hurt their enemies. Torres was using the poison battlefield they had created over weeks of fighting, turning the Vorthak's own feeding instincts into a weapon. "Dr. Lisa?" Chen's voice crackled over the communication system from her damaged laboratory ship. "Captain, I'm reading massive fluctuations in the relay node's quantum field. Kate's attack damaged something important. The node is trying to compensate, but it's using more energy than it can sustain." "How long before it fails?" Jake asked. "Maybe an hour? Maybe less, but only if we can keep the pressure on it." Jake looked at his tactical display. The relay node was surrounded by hundreds of bioships, all of them focused on protecting their most important asset. Getting close enough to finish it off would require a miracle, or human desperation. "All remaining ships, this is Morrison. We're going to finish what Kate started. Follow me in." The final assault was unlike anything in the history of galactic warfare. The 6 surviving human ships attacked the relay node from all directions, at once ignoring the swarms of bioships that tried to stop them. They fought like cornered animals, using every trick they had learned about turning weakness into strength. Captain Nina Rodriguez rammed the U.S. Vengeance into a cluster of bioships, her ship's nuclear reactor overloading to take as many enemies with her as possible. Captain Troy Baldwin used the UES Hammer's mining equipment to tear through organic holes, his crew singing old Earth songs as they fought. Jake Morrison's own ship, the Defiant, was the last one still capable of maneuvering. Half his crew was dead or wounded, and the ship's hull was more whole than metal. But the engines still worked, and he still had 1 nuclear warhead left in his weapons bay. "Jake," came Admiral Hayes' voice over the long-range communicator. "Your mission is complete. You've saved the Kethver. Pull back before you lose everyone." "Negative, Admiral," Jake replied. "We came here to stop the swarm. That thing is still coordinating thousands of bioships across this sector. As long as it exists, more innocent people will die." He turned to his remaining crew. "Anyone who wants to evacuate to the escape pods, go now. No shame in it. You've all done more than duty required." Nobody moved. His navigator, Ryan Cole, looked up from his damaged console. "Where would we go, Captain? This is where the fight is." Jake felt a surge of pride in his people. This was why humanity would survive among the stars, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they refused to abandon each other or innocent strangers who needed help. The Defiant's final attack run took it straight through the heart of the Vorthok formation. Bioships swarmed around it like angry insects, tearing at its hull with claws and acid. But Jake kept flying, kept fighting, until he reached the damaged relay node. "This is for every world you destroyed," he said quietly, and fired his last nuclear warhead directly into the node's quantum core. The explosion that followed did more than destroy the relay node. It sent a cascade failure through the quantum entanglement network that connected every Vorthok bioship in the sector. Without their hive mind coordination, the creatures that had conquered half the galaxy suddenly turned on each other in a feeding frenzy. "Jake," watched from his crippled bridge as thousands of bioships began attacking anything that moved, including their own kind. The perfect unity that had made the swarm unstoppable was gone, replaced by mindless hunger and aggression. Within hours, the greatest threat the galaxy had known for generations was destroying itself. Commander Zilthi stood in the rebuilt crystal gardens of Kethver Prime, watching the human survivors being treated in his people's medical facilities. Only 43 humans had survived from the crews of 12 ships. It had saved billions of lives at a cost that seemed impossible to calculate. Captain Morrison Zilthi said as Jake was helped into the garden. The human captain's arm was in a healing cast, and his face bore the marks of recent combat. My people had heard stories of Deathworld humans, tales of warriors from a planet so harsh it created the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We thought they were myths. Jake shook his head slowly. We're not warriors by choice, Commander. We're warriors because sometimes good people need someone to fight for them. That's all. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The Galactic Council, which had dismissed Earth as a minor player suddenly, found themselves dealing with a species that had accomplished the impossible. Ambassadors from dozens of civilizations requested meetings with the small blue world that had produced such remarkable defenders. But perhaps the most important change came in the form of a new message that began broadcasting from Earth across all known space. Admiral Hayes had authorized it personally, and it was simple, direct, and unmistakably human. To any species facing extinction, to any civilization under threat, to anyone who has nowhere else to turn, Earth is listening. We may be from a death world. We may fight in ways that frighten civilized species, but we will answer your call for help, because that's what humans do.